Welcome. This is the hotly anticipated, I suppose, Facebook Live Q&A session with Harry Singh. Harry's podcast was a runaway success, so it made me think to myself, wow, there maybe is a lot more dentists who are into property than I first anticipated. So I thought, who better to get on the show? I feel like there's a lot of crypto questions on the group, but a close second or somewhere up there are questions on property. And there is, of course, the received wisdom that you haven't got a diversified portfolio until you've got some property, and it affects every one of us because we need a house. Harry has just quite rightly pointed out to me that the timing of this Q&A may not be exactly, how can we say, ideal, because there's a big football match on at the minute, which I was just watching a minute ago. So yeah, we might have a little bit less in terms of numbers than anticipated, but it will be thrown up later on for a podcast for everybody's viewing pleasure. So what I'm going to do, feel free to throw your questions in the comments box, guys. They appear momentarily after they're typed, a few moments after they're typed, because there is a little bit of a delay in the feed. If it's okay with you, what I'll do is I'll just kick off with a question from the group. And yeah, welcome, Harry, to the show.
Thank you. And I said I'll give the listeners a bit of a warning. I'm a big Liverpool fan, so if I start shouting, we've scored. If I start swearing, may not have scored.
Thanks for the heads up, Harry. Thanks for the heads up. So yes, there is a question on the group here. It was posted anonymously not that long ago. So let me just see if I can scroll down and find it. I think it was the age-old chestnut of buying buy-to-lets in a limited company or buying them as a sole trader. So I'm sure Harry's heard it 100 times before, but let's just get up the exact wording of the question here, and we shall see. I won't be too long. It'll be somewhere down here. Somewhere. Oh, I'm struggling to find it a little bit. Well, do you know what? I can paraphrase. I know what it was anyway.
People are too interactive.
Yeah, I can paraphrase. The question was, is it superior? What are the pros and cons of owning your own property versus owning, well, specifically a buy-to-let, owning specifically a buy-to-let as a sole trader, or owning it under your name versus owning it through a limited company? What would you say the pros and cons are? Throw those questions up in the question bar for us, guys, and then Harry will answer this one for us in the meantime.
Okay, so obviously there's a disclaimer. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a professional accountant, so I'm not giving you any advice. Always seek professional advice. Don't take out your own teeth. Go to a dentist to see someone. But in terms of, it all depends on what you want out of the property. So there's two parts to this question. One is those that have got existing portfolio, like me, that's been investing since 2002, spoke to my accountant and said, okay, if I transfer to the limited or get incorporated, what's the plus side, what's the downsides? So there is, because I've had them for such a long time, it's a big capital gain. So if I did go incorporated with those, there'll be a big capital gain and stamp duty bill to pay. So just be wary of that if you are thinking, but same again, go to professional advice. If you're buying new, then, and the current properties I'm buying now, going forwards, we are buying by limited company, incorporation, SPV, special purpose vehicle. So what's the pros and the cons? So if you buy under your personal name, the advantage is you can get access to that money. The rental profits, you can get access to it for maximum cash flow if you want to replace your income. The downside is Section 24, which the government introduced, where the mortgage interest does not count as a tax expense. So give you an example, your rent is, say £1,000 a month, you're getting, and your mortgage payments were £500 a month. In the old system before Section 24, your profit was 500, you'd get tax on that. But now you get tax on the £1,000. There's a 20% tax credit you get. So you'd be taxed basically on the £800, but it's a still a higher tax bill. If you go incorporated limited, Section 24 doesn't apply. So same example, you've got a property within a limited structure, the rent is £1,000, your mortgage is £500, you'll be taxed on the £500. But as we know, those dentists that have gone limited with their business, it is much harder to get the money out once you reach the maximum salary and dividends that you've paid yourself. So it all goes back to what you want property to give you. So in a nutshell, if you need the income from property, then it may not be the best decision to go incorporated. If you're building a better pension pot and you don't need the money from the property, then incorporated could be a good idea. But like anything, personal situations are different for everyone. You need to speak to your accountant.
Harry, I saw something on the group the other day. Somebody commented this. Now, you'll know more than me. I wanted to run it by you, but someone was saying it can be advantageous to hold your property portfolio in a limited company should there be an issue where the tenants come after you for some sort of liability and a health and safety issue. And if it wasn't to be in a limited company and you were a sole trader, then your personal assets will be, well, you could possibly lose some of your personal assets to fund that, to pay out on a liability case. Is that correct?
Yeah, because that's what people go limited, because it's limited liability. So if the person can only make a claim, or if you go bankrupt or insolvent, they can only claim on the assets within that limited company. So that gives that peace of mind. But the likelihood of you having problems with your property, especially residential property, we always use full management. So they're going to check, make sure the gas safety checks done, complies with health and safety. It's never come across my mind to actually go limited because of that reason, because it's quite a relatively safe environment. And I'm speaking to other investors. I've never heard any investors being sued by their tenants for any breaches of health and safety.
So what you're saying is, in theory, yes, but de facto in practice, it's not really so much of an issue.
Definitely.
Yeah. And then really it depends on whether or not you want to just keep that money in your company and invest it, or, do whatever. Yeah, fair enough. Cool, thanks so much for that. All right, so we'll crack on with some questions in the feed now. So we'll just jump straight in there. We've got Wacho Lee. Evening, Wacho. I remember you from last week. Thanks for attending again. Ian Dunn has quite rightly pointed out, could this not have waited until after the match? Ian, I think I'm going to have to take that one on the chin and just apologise for that offhand. I can only say sorry. Last week, in my defence, some people asked me last week to have it on at 6, and I unwittingly agreed to it until I realised the significance of the occasion. I've just had to tear myself away from Liverpool Man United myself. Apologies to anybody listening who that has affected. That is completely my bad. Moving swiftly on. Gurjeet Kaur. Good evening, Gurjeet. How are you? Hope you're well as well. Then we've got Liam Boyle next. Liam would like to know, is it best to buy property with a repayment-only mortgage or with an interest-only mortgage? I think this is a bit of an old chestnut as well.
Yeah.
Is it, Harry?
Yeah, and I love answering questions because it's going to be yes, no, and maybe. Same again, depends on your situation. So I have my buy-to-let mortgages interest only because I want the maximum cash from the properties. So the biggest problem people have is they don't understand the difference between good debt and bad debt. So bad debt is credit card debt, personal loans, car finance that you're paying out of your own pocket. I agree. You want to clear that bad debt as quick as possible because it's not on an asset. Good debt is, one, is on an appreciating asset, which is property, and two, the debt servicing does not come out of your own pocket. The tenants are paying you rent, which will cover the mortgage payments. So, as Stephen Covey said in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, start with the end in mind. What is your end goal? Do you want to create generation wealth where you pass the properties on to the kids, which I do? So I want to keep the debt and the mortgage on the property because it's one way. There's different ways like trust. There's one way to save inheritance tax because that debt is taken into account when the government works out the inheritance tax. So I want the maximum cash flow and I want to pass it on to my kids with the debt onto it. If some people, obviously, it's a psychology reason, they can't sleep at night until they paid off their mortgage. So if it's going to stress you out by having the debt on these properties, then obviously it makes sense to have a capital and repayment mortgage. So it's an individual situation, depending on what you're comfortable with, and also what you want the property to give you, and three, what is your end game.
I think as well as that, we had Vinay Rathod on a while ago. He was talking about interest-only mortgages. They're a lot harder to procure these days as well, from what I know. For buy-to-let, it's not a problem. I've not had a problem with buy-to-let mortgages being interest-only. Really?
Obviously,
really?
residential is.
Wow. Okay.
It depends on your broker. If you've got all-to-market broker, then you should have no problems getting an interest-only mortgage.
Oh, I see. Okay,
I
fair
did,
enough.
I did one last month, so there's definitely no problems.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Okay, Liam, hope that was helpful. Joe Bat, good evening, Joe. Joe would like to know if you could remind us when Section 24 came into existence. When was that?
It's been at least at least 2-3 years. I think maybe probably 5 years. When you get to my age, time just flies. So at least 5 years, because they gradually reduced the mortgage tax relief that you could get. So it started off at least 5 years ago, where they said only you could claim 80% of your mortgage. Then they went down to 75 or 50%. Then it went down to 25%. Now it's been the lowest, which is 20% tax credit, or 20% of the mortgage that you can claim back there. So yeah, it's been around for a good 4 or 5 years.
Interesting stuff. Adam Pringle has asked, with the huge amount of quantitative easing, that's money printing to anybody who's unfamiliar with that term, do you predict a bit of a boom in the housing market over the next few years? Or do you personally think now the stamp duty holiday is stopped, furlough will eventually end, and an increase in unemployment will cause a correction?
Okay, so if anyone gives you predictions on what's going to happen in the property market, run a mile, because no one knows. Everyone got it wrong. In the first lockdown, saying we're going to have a crash, but because obviously the government incentive is stamp duty. My take on it is, if the stamp duty exemption ends on the 31st of March, as the Chancellor said, I expect for Q1 to be a solid boom or upward trend, Q2 to be a slow, maybe a bit of a decrease, and then Q3 and 4 going back up again. So I don't see a dip in the property market at the moment, because one of the things that affects mainly is interest rates, and interest rates are really low. Stay vacation service apartments, I think, will do a lot of work, because people may be scared to travel overseas. But we could be completely wrong. People might say, I need some sun now. Like you see all those pictures on Insta, people in Dubai partying around there. So no one knows human emotion, human nature, what's going to happen. In the first lockdown, people were booking more stay vacation. That was their plan, but it maybe all found out the window. What I would say is, it sounds boring, I would say stick to bread and butter. So I go for 3-bedroom houses, families, first-time buyers. They're not going to go out the market. They're going to stay in that property for 6 to 7 years. Once you've got that foundation, then look at the price of the cake. Then you can experience holiday let service apartments and those kind of things. But I wouldn't start off with those straight away.
So that hard limit on when stamp duty is ending, is that the end of this month? Did you say?
Yes.
Sorry, I just didn't catch that.
31st of March is where the exemption.
31st of March, right? Sorry. Yeah. Awesome, cool. Adam, hope that helps. We have Sarab next. Sarab, welcome to the show. Hope you're having a good evening. Sarab would like to know, what's the best advice for someone just starting out / hoping to get on the property ladder? General on this.
Yeah, okay, so the first thing is, it depends if they've got their own residential or not. So I would highly recommend to get their residential sorted out first, because it does open you up to more lenders. If you haven't got your residential, you can still get lending, but it's very few and far between lenders that will lend to you a buy-to-let mortgage if you haven't got your own residential. So they do prefer someone with a residential property. So if you haven't got that, then save up, get your residential property. Then I would say just educate yourself. You can self-educate, you can go on training, learn. There's so many free resources on YouTube, Facebook groups, podcasts, etc. Educate yourself and work out what kind of investor you want to be, in terms of, do you want to invest for cash flow or capital gain? Because if you're investing for cash flow, you're going to be going for higher yielding properties. So it may not be in London or the Southeast. It may be in Midlands, Northeast, Northwest. If you're going for capital appreciation, i.e. better pension pot, then you would be investing in the Southeast or London. So that would be my tips: residential, education, and work out your investing area depending on what you want property to give you.
Wachul has got another question. Second question from Wachul. Wachul would like to know, do you have any thoughts, Harry, on using a SIPP to buy property?
Yeah, definitely is very, speak to your accountant again. SIPPs and SASH are really tax efficient in terms of buying property. I always like to be in control of my own money. You cannot invest in residential property with those. It would have to be commercial property. But I would say financing, and James will go with this, it's like raising a kid, sending a kid to a stranger for 18 years and hoping to have a really rounded adult when they come back. You are going to take more care of your money. You're going to learn about it, invest it. So if you've got more control, you're not relying on someone else. So yeah, definitely a good point to do and way forward.
Cool. Dan Hardy Punia said hello. Hello, Dan. Hope you're well. Dan is the boss of a new job that I'm starting tomorrow, so I better be on my best behavior tonight. So Dan's looked after me very well. I can't wait to go and meet them all in a clinical setting tomorrow for the first time. It should be fun. I haven't done dentistry for about 5 months, so it's going to be a bit weird, but I'm looking forward to it.
Well, first patient.
Well, yeah. I tell a little bit of a lie. I suppose I've been on a few courses, I suppose, between now and then. But I'm just really looking forward to getting back into it, if I'm honest with you. Ryan Fisher would like to know, what about buying into a block of flats? A friend of mine has shares in a company that runs flats. He reinvests his rent payments into more flats. I'm not sure of the details beyond that. I'm just throwing these at you as I read them. Harry, I hope does that kind of make sense? Is that all right? Yeah.
Yeah, I personally tend to stay away from flats. Couple of reasons. You've got extra costs per month going in terms of, unless you're buying the freehold of the building and you're the freeholder. So assume you're not the freeholder and you're a leaseholder. You'll have obviously service charge and ground rent to pay on a monthly basis. Also, what I find, unless you're in a major city like London, Manchester, or Leeds, you wouldn't get stable tenants. You get more temporary tenants, because it's normally a couple that are going to move in together for the first time, realize they've got bad habits, that they hate each other, split up and move out there. Also, you've got to be wary, if you don't own the freehold, how long is the lease? Lenders are getting more strict in terms of they want like 999-year leases to give them protection. But on the other side, if you are the freeholder and you own the block of flats and separate them to leasehold, that's a really good profit strategy to do.
Awesome, brilliant. We've got Kazira next. Kazira's just said hello. Hello, good evening to you as well, Kazira. Hope you're having a great weekend. And next up, we've got Thana. Thana has said hello once again. Hello, Thana. As an associate, is it okay to have the dental income and properties under the same limited company? Does that make sense, Harry?
Yeah, I would probably separate them because of that limited liability. You don't want the assets mixing up with your income. So I would create separate. Same again, go for professional advice, because there may be a reason. We never know, we're not professional accountants. There may be a reason why you'd want to do it. It will suit your situation. But personally, and as a standard rule of thumb, you would separate them. So I have like a facial aesthetics clinic, my training academy, the property, they're all separate companies.
Yeah. So that's to minimize your liability should one go wrong, essentially, is what you're saying. Fair enough. Cool. And next, any disadvantages of doing that, really? Or any reason why you might want to have them all under the same company?
Not that anything that can come top of my mind.
There's always, of course, the fee that you have to pay to set up another limited company. But there's the massive benefits are outweighed by that, I guess. How much is it to set up a limited company these days? About 1,100 quid?
No,
something like that.
Do it for I've forgotten the name of the website. £45 to set.
No way.
Don't get your accountant to do it. The accountant's going to hate me for it. Swift Formations is the website. So I do it all via Swift, unless it's a really complicated structure. Yeah, your accountants will charge you hundreds of thousands of pounds. If you go to Swift Formations, they would do it for under 50 quid, unless it's a bit complicated, maybe a couple of hundred quid. That
is absolute gold dust, that. I was actually just on the cusp of paying a lawyer to start a limited company, so I'm glad you told me that. Yeah, and it was around the figure that I said. No money has changed hands just yet. I'm really glad you told me that. Thank you. Thanks.
If it's a simple structure and you can do it yourself and you're the only shareholder and director, then Swift Formations. If it's a bit more complicated, always seek professional advice.
That is an absolute nugget of advice. Thank you so much. Jay Patel would like to know, if you have a limited company SPV that holds property and you have an outstanding mortgage, does the company still report a profit for the year? and therefore pay corporation tax, or does the company not turn over a profit until the whole mortgage has been paid for?
I'm going to go for that standard response from Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Phone a friend. That is quite a technical question which your accountant will need to answer.
Fair enough. No worries, no worries. Parag would like to know, could we ask Harry his thoughts on HMO based on COVID? Is it still worth looking into, or do you think there will be a shift to standard 3-bed semi?
In theory, yes, there should be a shift because people don't want to share rooms and houses with strangers. And some of my HMO landlords did find there was more vacancies, but that would be the ideal situation. But the people that normally go for HMOs, they can't afford to rent a house by themselves. They can't afford to rent a flat by themselves. So there will always be a market for people that can only afford a room by room basis. So there was a temporary slump in HMOs, but I don't think it will be long term. And people have short-term memories. Once COVID is out of our system, everyone's got the vaccine, people will forget about it, they'll go back to normal. You'll just see on the first night of clubbing and pubs, people just forget all about social distancing. So I think there may be a short-term blip, but long-term, because the market's there, there will be a certain market that can only afford HMOs, and there will still be renting room. I
guess that all depends on whether or not, I mean, not to get too morbid or deeply into it, but whether or not the vaccine works long term. I'm sure it will. I mean, it depends on the virology, and you're kind of getting, it's a bit of a complex, and it's one that's a little bit hard to predict that. But yeah, should everything go back to normal, then just as what you said there, Harry, I shouldn't imagine why there should be any long-term issue, I guess.
Yeah.
Dan Hardy Punia, I find that interest on mortgages when getting under a limited company is much higher. So yeah,
when that I'll just, it was about to turn off.
Did I cut out? So all I said was Dan has noticed that when he's buying when he seeks a mortgage through a limited company, that he reckons the interest is higher. Is that an issue?
Yeah, a lot of people say that. I had a conversation at lunchtime on Clubhouse. My broker's not had a problem. We've actually got the same interest rates compared to what I would have done if I was buying personally. So I would just check. So with the mortgage broker, just make sure they're full of market in terms of they access all the markets. So there may be certain restrictions certain brokers have, that they can't have access to full market. So, but no, my brokers, I've never had a problem. But getting mortgages under the same rate as if I was investing personally.
Okay, so might just be a specific issue with whoever you've sought a mortgage from there, by the sounds of it. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah.
Harry, yeah, maybe worth shopping around on that one, Dan. Joe has asked another question. There used to be advice by our forefathers that one should stretch yourself as much as possible to buy your primary home to reside in, as that's devoid of capital gains tax. CGT is, I presume that Joe means capital gain tax there. If there was growth in the future, is that still the advice given?
Yeah, yes, used to be. So yeah, it's a tricky one. So definitely he's right in terms of capital gains tax. On your residential property, you don't pay any capital gains tax. Also, the advantage is because we've got this extra stamp duty, the first house you buy wants to be the most expensive house because you're paying, because you're paying the low stamp duty rate. So definitely, yeah, the first house, but then you don't want to stretch all your money. Obviously, in terms of, let's say, I don't know, you've got 200,000, you don't want to put all that down on deposit on one property. I would say get a lower price property and then use some of that money for investment purposes.
Yeah, fair enough. So not black and white, but something to consider, I guess. Fair enough. The next question we have, Huong Nguyen. Welcome, Huong. Congratulations on being on British Bake Off, by the way, Huong. Have you seen that floating around on the? There's a dental cakes and bakes group. So we've got Huong in the questions tonight. She's going to be on British Bake Off, which is amazing. Yeah, I was impressed. Yeah, I can't wait to see you on TV. Huong would like to know. She's simply put incorporation relief in question mark. I'm presuming you know what that means, Harry?
No. Yeah, well, I know what incorporation is.
Hwang, if you care to just elaborate slightly on that, then maybe we can answer, because I'm not sure what that is either. I was banking on Harry knowing what that is, but I'm not sure either of us do. If you could just elaborate on that slightly, I'm sure we'd be happy to talk about it. Then we've got Zishan up next. Is it better to cash buy one, or two buy-to-lets, or to buy-to-let mortgage and buy 5? I hope that makes sense. I think it makes sense. Does it, Harry?
Okay, this is a debate that always happens within property circles there. So one, we normally say never use your own cash or buy by cash, because you're not getting scale there, because then you can only invest in 2 properties instead of 5 properties. You miss out the capital appreciation on the extra 3. But there's a good idea to, if you want to buy multiple properties, is maybe do you have one property that you bought by cash or have it encumbered? So encumbered means there's no mortgage debt on it, because then you can use that as collateral when you buy other properties, for example, bridging finance or mortgage, where you may not get the mortgage on that property straight away, but you've got encumbered property. So we have used that numerous times to our advantage. So depending on if they want to scale the business and buy multiple properties in the long term, it may be advantageous to have one property encumbered, but there's no debt onto it. If they're planning only to have 2 or 3 properties, then I would say no use using up all your cash on one property, is to spread the risk over 3 or 4 properties. And also, the more properties you've got, the less risk you've got of negative cash flow, because if you only got one property and the tenant doesn't pay, you're buggered. If you've got 5 properties and say one tenant doesn't pay, the 4 other extra cash flow, positive cash flow, will cover that one that's gone into deficit.
Cool. Anna Montero has said, I'm so happy I didn't miss this. Anna, we're really happy to have you here. I'm sure Harry will agree. When Harry talked about sorting out residential first, does that mean trying to pay all of it before owning other properties? As an associate, when do we know it's the right time to change to a limited company? 2 questions there, really, Harry.
Yes, I know you wouldn't pay, but you wouldn't be paying off your residential. You just get buy it on a mortgage, and that will be enough for you to get access to much more wider lenders. So you wouldn't want to be paying it off straight away. Obviously, long term, we do encourage. Well, this is my personal viewpoint, because if you read Rich Dad Poor Dad, he always talks about your residential house being a liability because you're paying the council tax and utility bills. And same again, Grant Cardone, business guru from America, he doesn't buy his residential, he rents it because it's a liability. So you want to be buying your residential but getting a normal mortgage on that, and then obviously using the funds available for investment. And the second part was to do when should they be incorporated?
Yep.
There is no right answer. Is same again. The accountant, what their long-term plan is, short-term plan, etc. For example, if associates saving up money to buy their residential, it may not be the best to go limited, because obviously it doesn't show their true income, and they may not be able to get the highest residential mortgage that they want to. So they may be better to be sole trader, individual, while they're buying their residential. Once they've got their residential, then go incorporated. That's an example, but as I said, same again, speak to your accountant.
Fair enough, depends on your individual circumstances, I'm going to guess on that one. Ryan Fisher has said, Ryan's just concurred with something that was said earlier. Pierce has said, sorry I'm late. It's okay, Pierce, no big deal. This will be recorded. It'll go up on the group later so you can see anything that you've missed. Hwang's got back in touch. She's just expanding on her earlier question. Incorporation relief to move properties from your own name to your limited company. Properties in own name to, she's just said she would like to know what incorporation relief there is to move properties from your own name to limited companies, is what she's said there, I believe. Yeah.
I mean, when I spoke to my accountants many years ago about this, they said, they didn't mention anything about incorporation relief, but they said they worked out the amount of capital gains tax and stamp duty I would have to pay. It wasn't worthwhile. Same again, I'm not expert on taxing purposes, so incorporation relief, speak to your accountant. So obviously each situation is different. So they will work out this figures saying, okay, you've got your current portfolio at the moment. If we move it to incorporation, this is how much capital gains tax, how much stamp duty. If there is incorporation relief, I don't think it does relate to residential or investment property, but just double check that. They will work out how much it would cost in terms of taxes for you to move to limited. And they go, okay, if they say, in my example, they said you would have to hold the property for 200 years to get your money back from the capital gains tax and stamp duty, so it wasn't worth the while. If they say, okay, you're going to pay, I don't know, £10,000 in capital gains tax stamp duty, but you're going to get that back in tax relief within 3 years, then it may be worthwhile to do it. Same again, speak to your accountant.
Fair enough. Hope that's helpful, Huang. Dan would like to know, Dan's back again. Dan would like to know who your broker is, Harry. You spoke about your broker earlier that was able to get you the comparable interest rates with regards to borrowing individually or through a company.
Yes, if you message me or message James, he message me, and then I'll give the details out. I don't like to give them out in public places in terms of, I just need to speak to him in terms of, one, if he's accepting clients. Normally they don't, unless they've got like quite high net worth individuals in terms of, because they're quite a premium brokerage service. So if you message James, and then that will remind me to message my broker and see if they are taking on new clients and what the minimum requirement will be.
Wonderful. Ryan Fisher would like to know, what about handling buildings personally versus through a management firm? That's a good question.
In terms of the refurbishment or managing?
Ryan hasn't actually specified here, but I guess what he means is in terms of liability and in terms of actual day-to-day management, do you think it's worthwhile? I'm guessing that's what Ryan means.
In terms of, I'll answer both questions anyway. So refurbishment, we'll get a project manager in. I haven't got the time to see if they're doing deadlines, what materials they're sourcing. So it's worth the investment getting a PM. Obviously, it depends on the size of the project. The second one is buy-to-let, and I always get a full management. So full management from the letting agent. A couple of reasons. I don't want to be showing tenants around. I don't want to have direct access to tenants. That's why I gave up dentistry. So tenants don't own it, but they don't know who I am, how to contact me. And they all will pick better quality tenants because they will do more vigorous credit checks, employment checks, bank checks, etc. than I would. And then they've got skin in the game because the full management, the letting agent or management agent, doesn't get paid until the tenant pays. So they've got skin in the game. It's not it's basically, your time is better invested getting the next deal instead of managing tenants.
Fair enough. So you might have heard a little bit of feedback from my phone there, Harry. I was trying to get a second feed up because you might have heard your voice playing back to you. So apologies for that. I hope it wasn't too distracting. I couldn't get it off, so I just had to put it on standby straight away. Never mind. Ryan, I hope that was what you were after there. Let me see who we've got next. Wacho, again, with the use of incumbent property, wouldn't that property get hit with inheritance tax? I was told not to pay off and keep in debt with property.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah, eventually we would put a debt on that property. So early on, as we talked about, I don't know if they missed a conversation early on the Facebook Live where we talked about, that's why I have interest only. I don't pay the debt. I'll pass it on to the kids because they've got less inheritance tax. So there's different ways you can protect or reduce inheritance in terms of putting the property into a trust. But same again, you need to speak to a professional accountant. Because I know me and James have been talking about getting an accountant, specialist property accountant on board because I know dentists don't love tax or paying tax, and they always have tax questions. And then if you can get an accountant on the call or Facebook Live or your podcast, then obviously they can answer questions directly, and they're obviously fully compliant to do so.
A lot of accountancy questions on here tonight, which is great. And yes, Harry and I sort of behind the scenes were discussing about making a live cast out of that at some point. If anybody thinks that sounds like a good episode, please do, of course, let me know, and we'd be happy to arrange that for you at some point. Anna Montero from earlier has said, thank you. You're very welcome, Anna. Thank you for being so polite. Both answers helped a lot. Early stages of learning how to invest. You're very welcome, Anna. Ryan Fisher he has said, read the question about when to incorporate. Ask your accountant. Mine said the amount of private I do isn't worth it. I believe it comes into play, or it becomes more efficient when you're earning the higher tax rate, so over 50 grand, Ryan. But again, one for the accountants. I'm by no means a tax expert. That's just secondhand information from accountants that I've had on the show. So definitely one you might like to ask your accountant about, just as we were saying earlier. Zaid, good evening, Zaid. Are there any parts of the country you look to buy investment property or locations to avoid? I think we talked about this on our podcast, didn't we, Harry? Way back in the day. Seems like ages ago. Yeah. You might like to expand on that.
Yeah, so I would always say invest local to you within a half an hour drive. Not that you're going to be managing the property, but you're going to be doing multiple site visits. You know the areas, you know the good parts, the bad parts, the Bronx, the good schools, what the tenants are looking for. The biggest mistake, and I made these mistakes, I was investing in Aberdeen, different areas. The best story I ever heard was an investor I met in London who invested in Liverpool in Kensington because he thought Kensington sounded good because he was comparing it to Kensington in London. And if you've been to Liverpool, you would let your dog live there. So hopefully no one's from Kensington on the call.
Bit late now. Apologies anybody who's from Kensington and Liverpool. Sorry about that.
But yeah, you've got the local knowledge, so don't be, people have that shiny object syndrome where they think it's going to be, the grass is greener on the other side. The grass is green on the other side because the grass is fake. That's what I've been told there. So invest local to you. You will find an area within half an hour that you can do your property deals.
Smashing. Ryan Fisher said spot on with regards to our answer to the question earlier. You're very welcome, Ryan. Hope that helped. Dana has jumped back in to say, just to elaborate on the question earlier regarding the associate income. Do you recall which one that is off the top of your head, Harry? I'll just scroll up a little bit here. So yes, Dana earlier asked, it was the one about the having a limited your income, your personal income, going into the same limited company as what owns your properties. So let's just see what Dana said now. My accountant said it will half the account fees as it will be just one account rather than two. Is it worthwhile to keep it separate? I don't think it's just as simple as that, but I'll throw that over to Harry.
Yeah, and I get the best professional people, and they're not the cheapest by far, but their advice and weight is in gold. So actually good ethics on accountants say it reduce the fees, but it's not definitely, I don't know anyone that does that. And as we talked about, it's the liability. So if a patient goes after you and they see you've got 5 properties as well, they could go after those as well. So no, definitely keep it separate. But same again, there may be a reason. And if the accountant's the only reason he's giving you is to reduce his fee, then that wouldn't be that shows me it's not a good enough reason to make them all in one.
Yeah. I mean, even from what I know about it, I don't think making this decision solely on that basis would be the right thing to do, but definitely want to get some advice on.
A different account, not him.
Yeah, maybe. Narinder has said, welcome to the show, Narinder. What's the best way to source BMV properties? What are your thoughts on using a broker for this? Thanks.
Okay, so I've done both. My own marketing and using broker. The best deals I've done is my own individual ones that I found. The brokers ones, I'm a bit skeptical because if the deal is good enough, why are they passing them over? And 2, the deals that they pass over, they're not actually below market value. They're market value. They're in areas I don't know about there. So I'd strongly recommend to do your own marketing, build up relationship with estate agents, letting agents, mortgage brokers in your area. It is more time consuming, but the results are much better because you get much better discounts and they're true discounts. I did a webinar this morning for Dental Property Club, and we were talking about deals that I didn't do. And there was a deal in Manchester. He said worth 100, spend 10 grand doing it, be worth 140. It wouldn't go above 80 grand all day long there. So there are a lot of bullshitters, excuse my language, in this industry because it's not regulated. And our deal finders are, after many years not being regulated, but there's so many sharks in that business. Source your own deals. They're going to be the best yielding. You've got control over it.
Brilliant. Parag has said, thanks guys for setting this up. You're very welcome, Parag. Harry, what sort of yields do you look for when buying investment properties?
Okay, so the ones I'm going to be keeping, so the yield is the annual rent divided by the market value. And in the current climate, I don't go for anything below 6%. So the annual rent divided by the market value, minimum 6%. That's enough cash flow. So if interest rates went up by 2-3%, I still got a buffer, I still got a lot of cash flow coming in. I still do deals that are below 6%, but then I'll do a buy to sell, flip them. I wouldn't keep them long term. So 6% yield. That's gross yield.
Awesome. So Aida said, thanks for research the podcast. It's the very first episode in case you're interested. Zaid, Harry was the very first person who was gracious enough to come on my podcast when I was just setting it up, when it wasn't really anything yet. So I'm very much ingratiated to him. Very big thanks to Harry there. Wachula said, thanks. Oh, no problem. No problem. It should be me saying thanks to you, really. Wachul has said, thanks for the advice. You're welcome, Wachul. Huang has said, thank you to you both. You're very welcome, Huang. Ryan has said, just in addition to the point earlier from Anna about the accountant, saying that you purely might like to make that decision based on the fact that it will have your accountant's fees. Ryan has said he can't think of any reason why you'd want to expose your investments to dental law partnership as well. I think I might tend to agree with Ryan on that one. You might just want to research that one a little bit more and not make a decision fully on that basis, Anna, at least from my understanding of it as well. Joe Bat has said, good question. You're welcome, Joe. Narinder has said, thanks, guys. You're welcome, Narinder. Thana said, thank you both so much. You're welcome, Thana.
All right, dentist on the call.
We've got 70 here tonight. It's amazing, which is cool. And we've got Mandeep Burring has said thank you as well. You're welcome, guys. Thank you so much for being so polite and everybody's saying thank you. I actually think we've ran a bit dry on the question front here, Harry. So is there anything? Oh, wait, we've got one more. It's just popped in just as the door was about to close. We got Geran. He said, I've been paying into a lifetime ISA before getting my first time property. Is there anything else I can do as an associate to set me up for investing in a few years apart from doing a lot of UDAs? Getting a bit broader than property there, Harry, isn't it? But would you like to answer that one?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, there's two. I talk about the PISS formula. So the first two parts are passive income, invested income, and savings and simplify. So save as much as you can is basically reduce your lifestyle. So I made sacrifices. So I had the pain of discipline, living at home, cheap car, no fancy designer stuff. So I had the pain of discipline, so I don't get the pain of regret later on, because you can always upscale your life later on. So yeah, reduce your expenses to bare minimum, have a couple of years of not hard slog, but in terms of living modestly. There's a book called The Millionaire Next Door by Thomas Stanley, really good book. And he interviewed loads of millionaires in America, and he said they had the same house, same car for 20 years. He invited them to a luncheon. On one side, you had all the posh foods, caviar, lobster and stuff. On the other side, you had burgers, hot dogs. Most of them went for the burgers and the hot dogs. So that's what they were used to there. So, really good book, The Millionaire Next Door. But so yeah, we did lifestyle expenses that can come later. So my lifestyle is funded by my rent. It doesn't come out of my own pocket. And then obviously, yeah, it's making sense for making investment decisions. But then I would say the best one is education. Get educated, get knowledge.
Just to add to what Harry was saying there, I've read a few books, about 3 or 4 books on long-term investing and money management, and pretty much when you've read 3 or 4, there are certain details that each one of them mention consistently, and one of them is saving. Because if you can save money, reduce your lifestyle creep, and not begin to enter that rat race where you're trying to compete against other people, because that's a black hole as well. If you just pull yourself out of that and adopt this mindset where you live not frugally, but you're living and preserving this money that you've created, then that is so powerful, and that is the stuff that you can use to have an amazing lifestyle further down the line. Every single one of them mentioned that, just in addition to what Harry was saying there. Hope that was what you were looking for there, Jer. Joe Bat we've got 2 more questions. We're hoping to finish up at 7 o'clock. We'll squeeze in as many as we can here, guys. Joe Batt has said, last question, which property acquisition has taught you the biggest lesson? I think that seems like a really good question.
The one I made the biggest mistake, buying Dubai, overseas, new build, and a flat. So everything I preached not to do, I did. So overseas, I bought on impulse. I was on a holiday, 2005. Overseas, it was a new build, so I overpaid. It was a flat, so temporary tenants. And also, because it's overseas, you don't know the regulation, the guidance, the laws there. So went back home after it got built, rented it out. First 6 months, we're finding this family, the air conditioning unit's broken. Can you send us £2,000? This is broken. Tenants complain about this. Obviously, because I didn't live locally, I couldn't just fly out and say, okay, deal with it, etc. So buying overseas, buying new build, buying a flat, and buying on impulse, buying on emotion. So now take the emotion out of it, just go on the spreadsheet.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, sounds like you might have learned that the hard way there a little bit. Did you eventually move it on?
Yeah, so it went ups and downs. So remember 2005, 2007, 8 recession, credit crash, went down. Luckily, the tenants were good because the only plus point was we were renting to Air Emirates and they paid a year's rent upfront. So there was on a yearly contract. So that's the only good thing about it. But yeah, prices, I think it was 250 grand I bought it for. Then one time it went down to 120,000 in credit costs. I go, Jesus Christ. And then luckily it went back up to 250 and I sold it 2012. Didn't make any money, made money on the rent, but didn't make any capital gain. So, but yeah, that was an important lesson.
Glad to get rid of it by the sounds of it. John, let me just see here what John has said. John Clydesdale, welcome, John. Hope you're having a great evening and a great weekend. Do you plan on keeping your rental properties for many years?
Yeah, so my plan is anything I buy for long term, I will keep them indefinitely, and they're going to be passed over to the kids there. So that's how generations like Duke of Westminster owns half the properties on Oxford Street. They were passed on from his dad was passed on from his granddad, etc. So that's how the wealthy get wealthier. They pass on the assets down to the kids. So yeah, the ones, because when you sell, you got to pay capital gains tax and you lose the asset appreciation. So I will hold indefinitely, pass them on in trust there so they're protected. The kids will get them, and then I've taught them, they're going to pass them on to their kids.
Brilliant. Ryan has said nothing wrong with breaking even on a bad investment. I guess you're right. Fair enough. I mean, it could be worse. It could always sell for a loss. So yeah, breaking even and learning a lesson like that actually might be invaluable, I suppose, if you look at it from that point of view. We've got 10 minutes unless you need to be somewhere. Do you, Harry? We'll wrap it up by 7. Is that okay with you?
It was a 0-0 score line, so from what I quite boring
we didn't miss
okay.
Anything then? Fair enough. Omar would like to know, do you have any price limit/spec for the properties you buy, e.g. 2-bed houses under 150k? So yeah, does that make sense? Maybe some hard limits based on the specifications of the property in terms of price?
Yeah, so because we're going for a gross yield of 6% on our buy-to-let, it rules out, it's area dependent. For my area, it rules out anything above 250,000 as a buy-to-let. So once you've done your figures, so what you want to do is research what are average 3-bedroom houses in your area, average 3-bedroom rent, and then get the 6%, and then anything above that. We still do deals, so we still do deals on 4 or 5-bedroom houses, but we don't keep those. But because we're after that 6% yield in my area, Stevenage, Hertfordshire, that rules out anything above 250,000.
Cool, brilliant. I think that we've just run dry. The question well has just run dry. Although I did say that before and then some popped up on the screen. What we'll do, we'll give it a few more minutes. But in the meantime, Harry, is there anything you'd like to say just to conclude or wrap up?
Yeah, so obviously James has set up a perfect group, excellent group in terms of be active on the group, learn. There's no stupid questions. Obviously, you can reach me if you've got any property questions. I've just been swamped over the last few weeks, but I will spend more time in the group answering any property or giving some tips. Yeah, yeah, it's educate. Especially if you're not working, use that as downtime, education, get knowledge. There's loads of free resources, podcasts, YouTube videos, etc. Property, I know some people say buy to let is buy to let, but property, we have changed our strategy so that traditional buy to let may not be as profitable. So we are looking at more HMOs. Permitted development is a really good strategy. So the government have changed planning regulations. So if you've got a 2-story house, you can build 2 extra floors and planning's guaranteed. If you've got a bungalow, you can build an extra floor on top to convert it into a normal house, that's guaranteed. Commercial property, you can build 2 extra floors on top to make it residential. So it's actually much more creative and much more opportunities available now compared to when I started 20 odd years ago.
Interesting. There was something you shared in the group as well, wasn't there, Harry? It was like a Telegram group, except it was something else about property, wasn't it? Did you want to talk a little bit about that, or happy enough?
Oh yeah, Clubhouse. Yeah, so Clubhouse. You said Telegram again.
I threw you. Oh no, sorry, no. What I meant was there's a messaging app called Telegram. You see, not a literal Telegram. Sorry, just to clear up confusion, guys. Yeah, I meant the messaging app. Sorry about that. Back to you, Harry.
God, I need to talk. Talks if you're saying that. So yes, there's an app called Clubhouse from America. Started last summer. I found out that for my property contacts, but it's really good in terms of it's free to join at the moment. But there's different chat rooms. This obviously they call it real estate. I've learned quite a lot in terms of marketing, social media marketing, leaderships, presentations. There's thousands and thousands of chat rooms. I know a few dentists have got involved in those. But I was saying to James that there's quite a few on cryptocurrency as well, and Bitcoin, etc. So be interested to see their viewpoints on what they think is going to happen. But no, it's a free resource. I've got nothing to do with it. I've got no shares. I wish I did have shares in it. But it looks like an exciting platform to basically get free education. But obviously, it is quite time consuming. You do get hooked onto it. I use it like a radio station playing in the background. Obviously, I don't do any clinical work, but for the dentists at work, it may be a bit harder to active listen to it while you're treating patients.
Guys, if it sounds like your thing, we have just got one more question. We should have time to answer this one actually, Harry, because it's not very long, and then we'll wrap up and we'll call a hard limit on the questions from now, if it's all right, guys. The final question we have here is Chandni. Chandni has said, sorry if this question has been asked earlier, but does Section 13 seem to make buy-to-let properties less appealing than it was back in the day?
Only temporary at the moment, because obviously you cannot evict a tenant and there's a backlog for court cases. So a couple of things. So if you go for a gross yield of 6%, which is the annual rent divided by the market rent, you are going to have a flood of tenants. You can pick the cream of the cream. So because the yield is 6%, you know there's a demand from tenants. So we're very careful on who we pick. We always ask for guarantors, obviously deposits is normal. We ask for guarantors, and also what I do is I slightly go below market rent. So let's say the market rent's 1,200, we pay it on for 1,150. We've got a flood of tenants going, and we normally like to pick tenants. Obviously, it's normally your husband, wife, and kids at the local schools, secondary schools. Both have got jobs, so we've got stable income coming in. We've got good bank references, credit checks, employer references from the letting agent. In my 20 years with over 30 properties, I've only had to evict twice, and it was genuine reasons. They lost their job and they couldn't afford the rent there. So as long as you've got that 6% yield, you use a letting agent. I'm not concerned about you can't evict tenants at the moment or long term, because we have got really good quality tenants.
Thank you so much for taking the time out to talk tonight, Harry. That was, I'm sure everybody listening learned a lot there. If anybody's got any more questions related to property, Harry is of course on the group, Harry Singh. Feel free to drop him a message. Harry, can I just say a massive thanks for giving up your Sunday evening to come and talk to us. I hope you've enjoyed yourself.
Yeah. Luckily Liverpool didn't win. I would have been gutted if I missed that match.
That is completely my bad on the football thing, guys. So I'm going to take ownership of that one. Apologies. Anyway, as I say, we're going to wrap up now. So been a pleasure to see everybody on the show tonight. I hope everybody's had a good evening and is having a good weekend. We'll see each other very soon. In a bit. See you later, Harry.
Thanks a lot, James. Take care.